Even back in 2022, I realized that Ukraine have no chance in a fight against Russia, and that Ukraine wouldn't just lose the war, but lose any chance for the future. However, in the first year of the war, Ukraine had its successes. In 2022, Ukraine managed to stabilize the front line and recapture a lot of territories in the Kharkov region and even Kherson city. All this was accompanied by total propaganda. From the very beginning, all Western media began supporting Ukraine and talking about Russia's inevitable defeat. The whole of Ukraine believed in the success of the counteroffensive, just as the Soviet people believed in the victory of communism. But reality turned out to be different. Now many of the slogans from the first years of the war sound very ridiculous. No one talks about reparations, the 1991 borders, the decolonization of Russia, or about Putin and International Criminal Court. At least no sane person does. Of course, there are some special individuals who still leave these funny comments about the Ukrainian liberation of Mariupol, but who cares? And although even Ukrainians themselves now stop believing in victory, Ukraine continues to fight and to destroy its own population. In Ukraine, the possibility of even giving up Crimea is not discussed, let alone the Donbas. So this war will continue. Ukrainian state is too suicidal. This country has no future, and today I will be talking about it. Every man in Ukraine must either fight, be a volunteer, or at least donate to the front line. Their entire society is built around the war until the last Ukrainian. Now, when I remember studying in a Ukrainian school, I understand that everything was already heading in this direction back then. Ukraine couldn't forget about Crimea. Not in 2016, not in 2022, and not now. This country simply exists for the sake of war. There is absolutely nothing else in it. The only idea is not to be Russian and to fight Russians. The only achievement is not having surrendered to the Russians, so far. And what is the result of this war for Ukraine? A person in Ukraine is a resource. They can simply be kidnapped from the street and sent to the front. The borders are closed to men over 18. Oh, a few days ago it was changed. Now men younger than 22 can leave. There are already long lines at the Polish border. I'm really happy for my ex-compatriots who can move from Ukraine. But men over 22 still cannot leave this wonderful country without paying a bribe. Now the government is planning to introduce a criminal liability for illegally crossing the border. A big concentration camp. The demographics will never recover. Before 2022, Ukraine's population was about 38 million, and it decreased with every year. After war started, approximately 10 million left as refugees. 40% of the working age population has been lost. According to the most optimistic data from Ukrainian sources, only 30% of the refugees will return. Furthermore, Ukrainian data shows that the birth rate in the country is 10 times lower than the death rate. How can this be fixed? They don't know themselves. About 25% of all Ukrainian children have left for Europe. A huge number of people will leave for Europe or Russia as soon as the borders will be opened. The Ukrainian economy was already weak before the war, but the situation has deteriorated significantly since then. Russian strikes on industry and the energy sector have crippled it further. Ukraine is facing other war-related crises. For example, the mobilization of utility workers has led to a crumble of the infrastructure. And Ukrainian society doesn't care about the future. Ukrainians want to fight now and are not thinking about what will happen in a few years. Opinion leaders and an active minority, maybe 10%, are promoting support for the war, while the rest have no choice. Either agree and support this war, or hide, or try to escape the country. Now I want to remind you that this channel is only sponsored by you. If you like my content, you can help me on Boosty, link is in the description. I also posted there some translated reports from Mariupol 2022 for my sponsors. A few words on how Ukraine came to this. Since 2014, Ukraine actively brainwashed people by all available means. The population was being prepared for war with Russia. I remember how in school they told us about the dead heroes, about the heavenly 100, that is the 100 people who died during the Euromaidan, and about the Ukrainian cyborgs who defended Donetsk airport at the cost of their lives. All this propaganda to make us believe that dying for Ukraine is an honor. The best example of this suicidal propaganda for me is the song Our Father is Bandera, Батько наш Bandera. It became viral after 2019. Just look on its lyrics. Only one verse is about fighting the Russians. The rest of the song is about a crippled Ukrainian rebel dying. Last lines are just awesome. His mom had written Slava Ukraini upon his grave. And Ukrainian literature is really depressive. I'll be honest, I hated most of it. It's too pessimistic, no sign of hope. everything to promote the narrative that Ukrainians always suffered because of Russians. I've always been sick of it. But it doesn't really matter. The most important is that second opinion was suppressed. Russia is an enemy. If you are not agree, you will face troubles. NATO is good. Russia is evil. Russian social media were blocked since 2017. Of course, back then there was an opposition, but nationalists often attacked it. It's a complicated topic. For better understanding, you can watch this documentary which I translated. Anyway, nationalists prepared Ukraine for big war with Russia. No officials or public media questioned the course towards war with Russia. No one asked, is coexistence possible? Maybe Ukraine can be neutral, or even friend of Russia. Like in official Ukrainian narrative, Putin is a psycho and a murderer. And even if this would be true, maybe it's a bad idea to provoke him. And what do we have now? Ukraine keeps destroying itself in a pointless war. What's happening with Ukrainian society? A few months ago I followed some Ukrainian Telegram channels, and people discussed a sense of guilt of men who dodged in the army or escaped the country. There are a lot of men who don't want to die, and society makes them feel guilty, as if there is anything in Ukraine worth dying for. There are also new traditions in Ukraine. One of the most recent is a minute of silence every day at 9 am, to honor those Ukrainians who died in this war. People are stopping wherever they are, and cars on the road also stop. Sometimes those ones who ignore it are getting fined. Or another tradition from the western Ukraine. It isn't really new, some sources claiming that it's going from the Middle Ages, but it was forgotten until 2014. The tradition of kneeling before dead soldiers. There is video of conflict with people who refuse to kneel.
Вічна слава героїв! А ви двоє на коліна поїдете в цій машині. На коліна! На коліна, блядь, перед героєм!
That's all very sad, but if you will watch Ukrainian media and TV, you will understand that they haven't had enough of this war. Ukrainian Telegram channels still collecting money to help their army, and there are still people who donating for it. A lot of soldiers, commanders or activists trying to convince everyone that Ukraine must militarize even more. This guy is a commander of the Dnieper battalion, and here he is saying that both men and women should be mobilized from the age of 18.
Мобілізація з 18 років і дівчат, і хлопців, це питання виживання нашої держави. Абсолютна мобілізація всіх.
And here you can see the head of the Nazi organization C14 saying that it's good to die, and war is sacred for a man.
У 22-му році у нас не було ні зброї, ні підтримки, ні впевненості у завтрашньому дні. Як мені зараз казак писав в інстаграмі, каже: Жека, дуже дякую, твоє тоді натхнення в 22-му році, що пламрьом, зашибісь, бо війна священна, для чоловіка гідно це. Якщо ти навіть цивільний, десь вивозиш там дітей своїх, і ти загинеш в такий момент, ти робиш священну роботу, ти рятуєш там своїх близьких, це страшенний ворог. Якщо ми виживемо, це взагалі шикарно. Якщо що виживемо і у нас будуть всі кінцівки, це просто, що ще треба для щастя.
There are a lot of such people on Ukrainian TV. In fact, it's just a propaganda of suicide. Many of Ukrainian military operations are a good example of the suicidal nature of this country. There are tons of examples. Bakhmut, where Ukrainians spent a lot of lives to hold the Russian advance. Krinky, small village in Kherson region. Few thousands of Ukrainian soldiers were killed without any success. Or Ukrainian Kursk offensive. I still can't understand what was the purpose and why Ukraine spent so much soldiers when the only success was the supermarket. And the best example is the suicidal landings in Crimea, carried out just to plant a Ukrainian flag there. Not everyone made it back. And both Ukraine and Ukrainian people don't care about the cities and infrastructure. For them it's okay to destroy a city in an attempt to hold the Russians. Every city where Ukraine had time to organize a defense was destroyed. Mariupol, Bakhmut, Avdiivka, and the rest of Donbass. Again, there are plenty footage where Ukraine destroying infrastructure on purpose. And places where Ukrainians had no time to organize a defense, like Berdyansk or Melitopol, are undamaged. Unfortunately, Ukraine still don't want peace. In Ukrainian Telegram channels, people are discussing two scenarios: continuing the war and a ceasefire for several years to resume fighting later. Ukrainians hope that Russian economy will collapse or that Europe will join the war, and that's what Ukrainian leadership is hoping for. What will be after war? No one cares. I hope you understand why I'm glad I no longer live in Ukraine. It's a country which has only one purpose: to fight Russia, and it's the only idea. In this country, people are a resource for war. You are forced to hate Russia and do everything to fight it. You can't escape it if you are older than 22. No one cares what will happen tomorrow. what will happen after this war will end. The only idea is to destroy. A country may invent drones, missiles, or weapons, but it does nothing to make people live better. And this is the main difference between Ukraine and Russia. I hope this video was interesting. Thanks for watching.